We welcome you. We know you come here for different reasons: to find community, to seek your spiritual and personal truths, to question, to nurture your heart and soul, to be nurtured, to explore new ideas, to find comfort, and perhaps to find the answers to some of your bigger questions. We welcome you. We know you come from different places, different religions, different beliefs, and different backgrounds. We hope you will find comfort, connection, challenge, and love here. We hope you will find ways to provide outreach to others in our UU congregation, in our local community, and in our world community.
Any little ones out there want to come forward, or not so little ones, just kind of middle ones, or semi, whatever size you are? Come on up. We're going to have a little time here this morning. It's going to be good. Hi. We have this box here. Come on up. Yeah, I think you're still small enough. Yep, everyone's small enough. Come on forward. Anyone want to? So what is this? It's a treasure box, and that's what I think too. And also, it's filled with our wonders. And it opens our imagination, and together we can kind of play around a little bit for a few minutes before things get serious. No, just kidding. And today, I'm wondering if someone has never opened the Wonder Box and would like to. Would you like to? Yeah, right from the bottom. Yep, pull that up. There you go. There you go. Flip this down and lift. Oh my gosh, what is all of this? You want to pick that one up?
Looks like Cheetos.
Cheetos? Whoa. Okay, so what do we got here? Oh, we have a bunch of string. Here, I'll hold it. Thank you. Now, guess what? Guess who's in here? All of us. All of us. And I know because I cut the string myself, and there's a little bit of everyone in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to first figure out. Okay, well, actually, let me tell you a story. So when I was little, we had this summer camp that I went to, and we sang a little song that had the words, "We are a circle within a circle." Can you say that? We are a circle within a circle, with no beginning and never ending. With no beginning and never ending. And we kind of sang that song as little tweens and teens, and kind of spiraled into this circle. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. Because everyone knows, well, if you don't, today you know, that my favorite shape is a circle. But even, you know what I love more than circles? The circles that go within circles. We have all these other things. Concentric circles. We have Venn diagram circles, like our Unitarian Universalist circles. We have all of the different ways that we draw circles. But you know, our community is kind of like circles as well. And so I'm going to try to illustrate this as well. So this right here, if you two can take this circle, and I'm going to have you go over here. Oh my God, who cut this? Let's see here. Oh. Okay, you two take this behind me. Oh, go over there. I'm not in it. Okay, you guys go over here and put it back here by Lynn and make it into a big circle, okay? We'll see if we can do this. Go up there on the stage and lay it on the floor. Lay it on the floor, and let's make it into a big circle. Oh, good. Good. There you go, Lynn. See, now you wish you came up to help. Okay, here we go. Okay, so here's the circle. This is our community, but I actually think, let's take these ones. Let's see if, does everyone hang out with everyone in a congregation? Is that possible sometimes? No, here's another one. You want to lay that one out? So sometimes there are circles within our congregation. So maybe this one is like, oh, here's the choir. Oh, yeah, they have a lot of fun. Oh, here's some RE families. Oh, my gosh. Look at them. They're having fun. You want to give another one over here? Okay, good. I like how also these circles are kind of like little, what are they called? Like little blobs, and not perfect. Who wants to be perfect? Okay, good. Okay, let's stretch this out. Okay. Now, what are those? What do you have there? What do you got? What's in there? Oh my gosh, now we're getting to our size. Okay, let's put some of these in here. Okay, so now we have, yeah, put them right inside these other little ones right here. Okay, now we're talking. Yeah, that's like their little home. And now I bet some of you are thinking is, I don't like orange. That's what you were thinking, right? No.
I love orange.
Who made that choice? That was me. All right. You got some in everyone? Oh, let's put someone with this person over here. Okay, good. Okay, let's come over here and see what we made. Okay, so in our congregation, we can sit down. In our congregation, thankfully, first of all, we are a lot of different circles. And there's lots of different parts of our community. There's really a community of communities here. So maybe you like choir. Maybe you like nature and working on the grounds. Maybe you come from a more conservative religious background and you really need a community of folks who are also processing maybe what they believed before they came here, right? And so sometimes these little communities within the community, the congregation, kind of pop up organically. They happen no matter what. We can't control this process, okay? But when we do, we have the ability to nurture those communities within our community, or we could just say, let's take these out. Let's take these out. Let's take the big brown ones out. Yeah. And say, no communities of communities for you. We say, you are in the one community that is UUCCI. Now we'll leave the little circles there. But you know what? I don't know. I don't know if that looks as good. Does that look as good? No. Oh, thank you for saying no. No, I like the little community of communities. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about that a little bit more today and recognize that if we are a circle within a circle with no beginning and never ending, that's going to require us to look at each other a little different and to look at this beautiful community we have a little differently as well. So I think you guys are you cooking something today? No, that's next week. Okay, that's next week. Good, I'm on top of it. Dang, that transition would have been very good. So instead, you're going to do something fun. And I know you will, because Miss Adrienne always comes up with very fun things to do. So we're going to sing our children and youth off to their classes this morning. Thanks for helping.
My reflection for today, besides the fact, Happy Indigenous Month, just had to throw that out there. I remember as a child the family gatherings. We had one in the spring and one in the fall. You know, when you got to see those distant cousins, even the ones you don't like. Which of the boys had grown, developed muscles, and had tales about heroic ventures. When you got to see which of the girls had developed boobies, boyfriends, maybe even children of their own. The old grandmas, grandpas, and the creepy uncles were there too. Did you have family reunions? Do you still? We did, but we had one in the spring basically to see who had survived the harsh winter, who had been lost, and changes in family structure. Often these gatherings included clans and family units outside of our circle. Those were especially fun, but as a child, I really didn't understand the significance. Now I have a better understanding and miss those gatherings. Through the campfires, storytelling, and story exaggerations, we found a renewed independence, how it took all of us doing our part to keep the clan and the Cheyenne culture preserved and strong. Conversations for the adults centered on what resources were needed and what could be shared so that we might be accountable to others. Extra seed, food supplies, clothing, etc. Some shared stories of their experiences from outside the res so that we might be adaptable to the changes happening in the white government and how we might evolve or transform while keeping our values and goals as a people. In the past, spring and fall gatherings were to celebrate, evaluate current needs, make plans for moving the groups to summer grazing areas where the hunting was better, a review of current leaders and to determine whether they were worthy of carrying on, or was new leadership needed? Where, when the next fall-winter encampment would be? A celebration of loss, new relationships, new members, babies, marriages, maturations, as well as conversations around conflict and how those conflicts should be addressed. On the res, we didn't get to do that planning because we were not allowed to migrate, but the plans were made anyway, just in case. Leadership was evaluated, resources reviewed, and decisions made about how we might plan for the 7 generations. Always, it was about doing right. Now, what was necessary to plan for the 7 generations. I might add that according to Google, a generation can be on average 25 years. UU has gone through at least 2, is in the current, and must plan now for the next 4. My math is miserable. Sorry. Dick, check this for me. For those of you who do like math, you might want to think about, are we actually planning for 2125? I would like to see Unitarian Universalists begin to think of ourselves, our congregations in particular, as a community of communities. And I think it's one of the next steps in our evolution as a denomination, as a movement, because we currently think in terms of family metaphor, which is really too narrow and too small. It encompasses us in a way that I think limits our expansion. Unitarian Universalism is a universal language. If we think of ourselves as a community of communities, then we can begin to focus on what are the interests and needs of the young adult community. What are the interests and needs of the community of families who populate our religious education, or those who potentially will come? What are the interests and needs of the communities of people of color? Whether we talk specifically around ethnic groups or people of color as a larger group. What are the interests and needs of the senior population? So we have lots of different facets of community already in place, and yet we continue to think of our church as a family. So we closed the door in a sense because families are, we're kind of like units, right? I say to people often that families have a hierarchy. You know where the authority is in the family. If we impose that on this community of communities, then basically we're saying to people that the authority channels are very, very narrow. In a family, you know who you can bring home and who you can't, and it's unspoken. And we impose that metaphor on our church. So I think that we limit our imagination about growth, our capacity for growth, through metaphors. Metaphors are so powerful. You use the metaphor and it conjures up all kinds of meanings that's unspoken. We need to experiment with and experience the communities of communities as a metaphor for how we will organize ourselves and how it will grow. Because not all of those communities are not only in our congregations, but that's our bridge to the wider community outside of our church doors. So again, I just want to encourage people to intentionally begin to experiment with the idea of our congregations as a community of communities.
Since 2022, we've spent each autumn engaged in a special sermon series, a fall sermon series, to help us to reflect on a theme together in community. These series are about 6 Sundays long and always end with the final 3 services occurring in the final Sunday of October and the first 2 Sundays of November. The Sunday services team and I have chosen this timing because these 3 Sundays that conclude the fall sermon series each year are particularly significant in the life cycle of our congregation. Indeed, the 3 are intended to acknowledge the continuum of life itself and of our past, present, and future as individuals, as a collective community, and in the wider world. Each of the fall sermon series themes adds a unique perspective to these annual services. Last Sunday, we held our annual Memorial Sunday, where we honor those who have died in our lives, in the life of this congregation and in society at large. We created a special place. We set a table for memory and love, and we recalled the stories that are sometimes forgotten and which can be remembered when we come together and know that they are never fully gone. This Sunday, the first Sunday in November, is our annual meeting Sunday. Yippee! The annual meeting. Okay, I see what you might be thinking. The annual meeting Sunday, on the face of it, doesn't sound so, what's the term? Well, inspiring. But hear me out. I think our annual annual meeting Sunday is very important. Today, which we will hold our 58th annual meeting, is truly an act of achievement and of arrival, of not mere survival, but of persistence, that we, in the face of rising challenges and threats, that we are still here, that we made it through this past year. When we harnessed our values, we embodied our mission, we stayed true to our objectives, and we focused more on our vision, on moving closer to our vision to be a beacon for diverse religious thought and courageous action. Indeed, today is not just about holding an administrative meeting to fulfill the ongoing democratic governance of our congregation, although not to be taken for granted. It is also a celebration of love, a reflection of our resilience, and a sign of our vitality and promise ahead. Finally, our annual meeting Sunday makes way for Generosity Sunday next week, where we will harness the power of our collective generosity and the hope and love and vision we share for the emerging future in order to commit ourselves anew to the work before us, promising one another that we will provide the necessary resources of our service and money to not just meet our budget for 2026, but enter the year with confidence for the great things that are before us. All right, with that in mind, what does this year's theme of the Fall Sermon Series have to offer us as we gather once more on this annual meeting Sunday? Well, this year we have been exploring the topic of being a part of social change ecosystems through the framework provided by Deepa Iyer and her workbook, which was chosen for the UUA Common Read. Considering we are gathered today to honor the 58 years that this congregation has been gathering, and longer when we consider the first chapter of the dailies 5 years earlier, albeit ending in tragedy, it would be prudent to understand who these Unitarian Universalists are that have made up this community and make it up now, a community of hope and courage, of loving persistence and steadfast vision. In other words, it is wise to look around, and to see one another deeply for who we are as the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Columbus, Indiana. I'm particularly interested in this topic of how we see ourselves as a congregation for 2 reasons. The first is that when we are not intentional and self-reflective about who we are, the chances that our actions will not be grounded in our values, mission, and vision as a congregation goes way up. And at our best, I think we want to align what we do with our values, mission, and vision, right? The second reason to be reflective, especially on this Sunday, is because how we think about our congregation has a major influence on how we relate to one another and how we act in and beyond this community. It reminds me of a sermon I gave in March of 2024, in which I spoke about how useful metaphor can be in helping us, despite the limitations of language, to talk about the sacred, which some refer to as God. Well, metaphor can also be useful and necessary when talking about our congregation, which is both, on the one hand, ordinary, and on the other hand, quite extraordinary. While there could be many metaphors used to describe our congregation, one of the most common, and the one that I have seen many of you refer to, and I use sometime as well, is the metaphor of a family. A family. Have you ever thought of UUCCI like a family? It's not a stretch. It's not a bad thing even completely, especially if you think about our congregation's size and our origin story in these years of development. For a very long time, our congregation was quite small, like a few dozen adults. And additionally, we were lay-led, so there was no mom and pop around. It was just the kids running the roost. It was all of you, 1988, until you finally got to a full-time minister in 2004. We've been a more informal group, a loving, laid-back group of liberal-minded individuals who have found one another and in some cases for the very first time been embraced for our worldview and similar values. Thinking of UUCCI like a family can in many respects be an endearing idea. After all, family can be a rock upon which we can find our grounding, and it can be a constant assurance throughout life's tumultuous unfolding. But there are also some limitations to this metaphor, and our reading begins to invite this consideration this morning. Paula Cole Jones, who is a Black Unitarian Universalist woman living in Washington, D.C., has been a leader in our religious tradition for decades. She is a former president of DRUM, which is an acronym that stands for Diverse and Revolutionary Unitarian Universalist Multicultural Ministries, and an independent consultant she has been, specializing in multicultural competencies and institutional change. In fact, her input on Unitarian Universalism is very extensive, but we don't have time fully. But I will say, prior to our 7 principles, which are in the narthex, becoming updated by the new shared values, Paula Cole Jones was the co-author and co-promoter of the language of the proposed 8th UU principle, which focused on anti-racism and building the beloved community. However, the insight she brings to us this morning is from her provocative invitation to avoid talking about UU communities as families. She says that the family metaphor is, quote, really too narrow and too small, especially when you compare it to the expansiveness and universal message of our faith. She also names very valid points that families can be pretty messy and complicated. There can be a lot of assumptions and ground rules and things that are taken for granted, or at least they aren't spoken about very often. She reminds us, quote, that families have a hierarchy, where the authority is in a family. If we impose this metaphor, then basically we're saying to people that the authority channels are very, very narrow. In a family, you know who you can bring home and who you can't, and it's unspoken, end quote. It can also be hard at times to join a family. I feel very lucky to have married into a wonderful family, but it's not always true for everyone. Many of you have at one point or another joined this community or another community or perhaps another family, and depending on when that was, that could have been an easier transition from outsider to insider or more difficult. There are eras in every congregation where there are a lot of transitions all at once and changes in the makeup of the community, as we've had at different chapters of our life. Regardless, Paula Cole Jones's argument is not just that the family metaphor might not be the most useful to us, but that there may be another way to think about our congregation that would be better. Since 2019, she has been helping Unitarian Universalists shift our thinking about our congregations from being a singular family to actually being made up of multiple smaller communities. The idea is that our communities are not singular in nature, but plural in nature. When we look around at our community, it can be easy to just lump everyone into one big pot, in one big family, and a growing family. But this can inevitably erase some of the beauty and nuance and flavor of our community. It can distract us at times from who is really in the room, what their particular needs are, and how we can collectively serve one another and unlock our collective love to serve the world as well. I think the idea that UUCCI is a community of communities is not hard to wrap our heads around. If you think about the membership of our congregation, if you just look around this room today, if you put it down on paper or start to look more closely, you can see we are not all the same. We actually live and move within this congregation in very different ways. If we wish that everyone would just fall in line and follow the same pattern of involvement as we may have once done, we get into that golden rule trap where on the surface, where we are invited to treat people how they would want to be treated rather than, okay, I'm sorry, I misread that. We get into that golden rule trap where on the surface, treating people as you would want to be treated sounds really progressive, but is actually just self-centered. Instead, the community of communities model can center the platinum rule, which is a shift from valuing equality, treating everyone the same, how you want to be treated, to equity, understanding the larger ecosystem that we move in, to honor the honor the sacred subjectivity and internal pluralism within our community. I'm going to say this again. The community of communities model can center the platinum rule, which is to treat people how they want to be treated, which is a shift from valuing equality, treating everyone the same, to equity, understanding the larger ecosystem that we move in order to honor the sacred subjectivity and internal pluralism within our community. And in case you were wondering, if we can practice honoring that internal pluralism, that we are plural in community, that we are a community of communities, a circle of many circles within a circle, then we can better address and celebrate the loving pluralism beyond our congregation, both on this interfaith campus and in the wider world. Does that make sense? I think it makes sense, but it takes all of us to think about this and to chew on it. Through the shift in perspective that Paula Cole Jones says, it is easier for us to consider in that community of communities model, what are the interests and needs of the young adult community, or what are the interests and needs of the community of families who populate our religious education programs, or who might potentially come? What are the interests and needs of the communities of color, whether we talk specifically around ethnic groups or people of color as a larger group? And she asked, what are the interests and needs of the senior population? So what I'm inviting us into with the author of our reading today is to go beyond a family metaphor, which might otherwise get us to think about parts of our community like parts of our family. Which we all know, there can be some mean ways that we talk about and treat one another in family. We think about the ideal child, the oldest perhaps, or maybe the firstborn. Or no, wait a minute, the secondborn, the youngest, the rebellious younger one, or an uncle or an aunt who never seemed to get a job and move beyond the 1960s, or the distant relative who shows up every now and then but never really seems to leave. When we get into those dynamics, and we start kind of placing each other, it's just easy to start, not fully seeing one another in our wholeness, in our beauty, in our fullness, or as Howard Thurman said, in our genuine idiom that we each are. What would it mean? How would we shape and serve and invest in this congregation if we recognize the abundance of smaller communities within this community? How would we show up for one another differently? How would we care for the elder and the infant? How would we care for the founder and the visitor, for the first in the door and the last? When we look at our community, how we look at our community in a way, it is hard to see anything except beauty and possibility when we look that way. It is hard to see not hope and courage, love, and the good work of justice before us. This shift in orientation can also help us to move away from thinking of our congregation as a community just of individuals, it's about the people, to a community of communities, which is still of people, but there's a little bit of that intermediary that we really need. While it can feel really humanizing and liberal to see each and every one of you as solely individual, that middle ground is where it's all at in my mind. It is, and in that space, we are each likely to be in one or more of these communities, like we did with the children's time this morning. It helps us to preserve the sacred diversity of our congregation when we do so that why we do or don't do one thing or another gets out of the framework of, well, one or two people say we shouldn't or should do that. Instead, we consider the interests of our many communities within this congregation, this wider circle of circles, and how we can best serve those needs, and in turn experience the vitality and growth of our collective flourishing. I want to witness our collective flourishing, our rising up. I want you to see that in one another and imagine what is possible when we gather not for a family dinner, but for a meeting of our loving hearts and various identities and life situations, when we gather not to seek sameness, but to honor our manyness, not our oneness, but our pluralism as Unitarian Universalists, and as those who make up this resilient, persistent, and undying congregation now on our 58th annual meeting Sunday. Look around and know that you are not alone. Look around and know that you are not a problem here. Look around and know that we will make room for you. Look around and know that together your presence here with open hearts and minds in the beauty that we are open to of life abundant and be together, we can witness the wondrous love that flows within us, among us, and beyond us in this precious life we share. Just look around. May it be so. And amen.